Next on the Rockbridge Report, one of the officers in the Breonna Taylor case has been charged, but not for what protesters hoped. See why violence erupted across the nation. And a man got caught in the middle of Hurricane Sally on his sailboat. See his story of the bizarre adventure. And then Shauna will tell you how long this warm weather will stick around. And later, have you noticed a change in your water bill? Mary Alice Russell will explain why it's not just you. All that and more on this edition of the Rockbridge Report.
Live from the campus of Washington and Lee University with news from Rockbridge County, this is the Rockbridge Report.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Rockbridge Report. I'm Donald LeCompte and I'll be joined later in the newscast by fellow news anchor Lily Mott, weather with Shauna Muckle, and Brennan Black on sports. Outrage spilled into the streets last night in Louisville and many cities across America, including Washington, D.C., after a former police officer has now been indicted in the Breonna Taylor case, but not for her death. In Louisville, where the violence first erupted, 2 officers were shot and wounded. An activist vowed to fight again today. This grand jury decision is coming 6 months after her death at the hands of police executing a warrant. CNN's Daryl Forges is on the ground in Louisville with the latest.
Protesters chanting her name and facing off with police.
Under Kentucky state law, this is an unlawful assembly.
The outcry over the death of Breonna Taylor is growing following the announcement of wanton endangerment charges leveled against just one of the officers involved in the operation that led to the shooting of Breonna Taylor.
The grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment.
Of the 3 officers investigated by the grand jury, none are facing charges related directly to her death, and only one, Brett Hankinson, whose bullets did not strike Taylor, is under indictment. The other officers were found to be justified in their response to gunfire from her boyfriend. The Kentucky Attorney General says he intends to prosecute Hankinson to the fullest extent possible, and says while people may disagree with the decision, the investigation reviewed all the available evidence.
Justice is not often easy. It does not fit the mold of public opinion, and it does not conform to shifting standards. It answers only to the facts and to the law.
But for those fighting for justice for Taylor, that's not enough.
You pray every day that this racist criminal justice system and legal system that I call the legalized genocide of colored people will be abolished in America.
In Louisville, Kentucky, I'm Daryl Forges.
President Donald Trump on Wednesday again declined to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the November 3rd presidential election.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
For his Democratic opponent, the Biden campaign said on Wednesday, quote, "The American people will decide this election, and the United States government is perfectly capable of escorting trespassers out of the White House." If you're looking forward to the end of 2020, you are not the only one. The new year is just a couple of months away, but the famous Times Square ball drop will look a little different this year. It's going virtual. The news about the ball drop dropped on Wednesday. Organizers say they want to ring in 2021, quote, visually, virtually, and safely. They say there will still be live entertainment, but it'll be limited because of COVID-19 restrictions. Details for the event are still in the works. The Rockbridge Regional Jail may have a new solution to an old problem: overcrowding. Help would come from the outside to reduce the number of inmates jammed inside the jail. Grace Mammon reports.
Rockbridge Regional Jail is accommodating double the number of inmates it was designed to house. Superintendent Almerode said overcrowding has been an ongoing issue at the jail.
That capacity is rated in many aspects, not just a bed, but bathroom facilities, shower facilities, food service facilities, program services. So it's really designed to manage about 50 to 60 people incarcerated, and it's managing twice that.
He said overcrowding is not a result of harsh law enforcement for nonviolent crimes, but he does think it's a result of repeat offenses. 82% of inmates are repeat offenders at Rockbridge Regional Jail. Almerode said that's largely because the jail doesn't have a program to help inmates re-enter society. He wants to change that, but says it takes people on the outside to help.
There has to be a nucleus, and likely that's going to be our facility. And then we have to have resources that we reach out to.
Rockbridge Regional Jail has contacted an outside agency called Total Action for Progress. James Wall, the case manager for TAP in Covington, said many inmates don't know that these resources exist.
That's what my job is. My job is to work with them and find out what they need in order to move forward and get their life together.
TAP receives funding from Virginia Cares, a statewide organization that pays agencies to implement their reentry program. Anthony West, a chief operations officer of Virginia Cares, said that their staff works with inmates before they are released and encourages them to come to the office when they get out.
For those that want employment, we start doing job readiness workshops to see if they are up to par as far as doing resumes, filling out applications, doing mock interviews, things like that.
The organization reaches out to local groups to find opportunities for recently released inmates. Wall said inmates are often very excited for work upon release.
And believe it or not, these guys are usually 100% worker when they get on a job because they haven't had a job. They've been working for like 35 cents.
West said he is a returning citizen himself, so he knows the importance of this kind of program. Almerode said he hopes the partnership works out so Rockbridge Regional Jail can finally have a reentry program.
Me and my staff, although we're energized about it, we can't do it alone.
West said he firmly believes everyone deserves a second chance. If a reentry program is implemented at Rockbridge Regional Jail, many inmates may have that opportunity. For the Rockbridge Report in Lexington, I'm Grace Mammon.
Next on the Rockbridge Report, the CDC director has contradicted Trump's claims on COVID-19 once again. See how many Americans may still be at risk.
It's a mild, cloudy day here in Lexington, but this weekend brings some much warmer temperatures and sunny skies. Tune into the Rockbridge Report to hear more about this week's weather.
And then, a man and his boat survived a hurricane. See how he did it. Welcome back to the Rockbridge Report. I'm Lily Mott. At least 22 states are now reporting a rise in the number of new coronavirus cases. That's up from 9 states last Monday. Some of the top experts on the president's coronavirus task force are warning that young Americans can spread COVID-19, contradicting Trump's recent comments on the issue. And we are learning that a top expert on the task force, Dr. Deborah Birx, is so distressed over the administration's response to the virus that she is uncertain whether she can remain in her position. CNN's Jim Acosta reports.
At a hearing in the Senate, top doctors on the Trump administration's coronavirus task force gave lawmakers a dose of straight talk, straying repeatedly from the president's recent misleading comments on COVID-19.
A majority of our nation, more than 90% of the population, remains susceptible. It's imperative that these young adults recognize that even though they are unlikely to get seriously ill from this virus, they are major contributors to the spread of COVID-19 in our country at this time.
Contrast that comment from Centers for Disease Control Director Dr. Robert Redfield with Mr. Trump's whopper earlier this week that young adults are not affected by the virus.
Take your hat off to the young, because they have a hell of an immune system, but it affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
Redfield also defied Trump world talking points when he ripped into former Health and Human Services spokesman Michael Caputo, who accused CDC scientists of betraying their country.
I want to add, how disappointed I have been personally when people at HHS made comments that they felt that there was a deep state down at CDC.
Dr. Anthony Fauci clashed with Kentucky GOP Senator Rand Paul, who mocked the infectious diseases expert's advocacy for stringent social distancing measures.
Senator, I'd be happy at a different time to sit down and go over detail. You've said a lot of different things.
You've lauded New York for their policy. New York had the highest death rate in the world. How could we possibly be jumping up and down and saying, oh, Governor Cuomo did a great job?
Oh, you misconstrued that, Senator, and you've done that repetitively in the past.
Sources tell CNN Task Force Coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx is so distressed over what she sees as her diminished role in the COVID-19 response that she's uncertain whether she wants to remain in her current role. According to sources close to Burke, she believes the president now prefers to listen to controversial task force doctor Scott Atlas, who not only has no expertise in infectious diseases, but has flirted with the idea of herd immunity. A Burke's friend said of Atlas, the president has found somebody who matches what he wants to believe, adding, there is no doubt that Burke's feels that her role has been diminished. A White House official pushed back on that, saying President Trump relies on the advice and counsel of all of his top health officials every day, and any suggestion that their role is being diminished is just false. The president continues to flout task force guidelines on the virus at his rallies, where supporters aren't social distancing, and Mr. Trump ridicules Democrat Joe Biden for wearing a mask.
He feels good about the mask. I wonder, in the debate, it'll be him and I on the stage. Is he going to walk in with a mask?
The president may be gaining ground on Biden as a new poll finds Mr. Trump pulling even in Arizona and perhaps inching ahead in Florida. The widow of the late Arizona Senator John McCain says she's endorsing Biden.
Come with me. Let's vote for Joe Biden. Our country needs a new beginning. We need someone with character, integrity, and empathy as well.
Dr. Deborah Birx is absent from the White House briefing room, but she is spending more time traveling to states that are seeing a spike in new cases. Most Lexington churches have resumed in-person services, but churchgoers must wear masks and stay at least 6 feet apart. Reporter Jin Nee joins us live now from one of the churches serving their flocks in both in-person and streaming online, Trinity Methodist Church. Jin?
Hi, Lily. I'm standing right in front of Trinity United Methodist Church right now. Trinity and Grace Episcopal are just a few of the churches that are opening their doors back up for locals for in-person services. They are, however, still offering live stream options for members of the congregation who would prefer to stay at home. Rules and church service details vary from church to church. I've spoken with ministers and others from 7 local churches who are, however, advising members of the congregation to refrain from gathering after services are concluded. However, they know that interaction and community engagement are a really important part of the church community and are hoping things will improve soon. In-person choirs are no longer singing, but Grace Episcopal is still offering recorded hymns that will be available after services end every week. For more information about how your church is conducting worship, reach out to your pastor or minister.
Thanks, Jin. Look for reporter Jin Nee's story on the rockbridgereport.wlu.edu. Americans may not know if trick-or-treating will happen this year because of the pandemic, but they are buying a lot of Halloween candy while they wait to find out. U.S. sales of Halloween candy were up 13% over last year in the month ending September 6th, according to data from market research, IRI, and the National Confectioners Association. That's a bigger jump than the usual single-digit increases. Sales of Halloween chocolate alone are up 25%. Earlier Halloween displays at some chains like dollar stores, Meijer, and ShopRite likely helped boost sales. But Americans may also be in a mood to celebrate after months of anxiety from COVID-19. If you are a resident of Lexington, you are probably familiar with frequent changes to the water bills. But do you know why rates increased or why the city changed to monthly billing last July? Mary Alice Russell has the answers.
Lexington's water rates keep creeping up to cover the costs of bursting pipes and other issues. The 8% increase in July was because of the increased cost to the city from the Maury Service Authority, which is the water treatment service for the city. The head of Lexington Public Works, Jeff Martone, said that the new monthly billing system helps the community.
People who are having water leaks or problems with their system, it kind of alerts them to the fact monthly instead of bi-monthly they have an issue going on. It also keeps them more in tune with their billing and gets their payments on a more normalized program before that gets too far away from them.
The majority of water in Lexington goes to the Virginia Military Institute and Washington and Lee University. VMI declined to comment. Washington and Lee sent the Rockbridge Report this statement. The change in how the city was structuring water and sewer rates was addressed approximately 4 years ago, so we have been prepared for the change and built our budget assumptions around the changes. So while the increases are significant relative to the past, we have been able to plan appropriately for them.
In 2016, Lexington decided to implement a new plan to replace the old pipes downtown. Bonds in the city budget covered some of it, but the new increased water bill covered the majority.
George Ugie is the owner of Southern Inn on South Main Street. He wishes that something had been done about the 50 to 100-year-old piping years ago.
I'm sure that my grandfather and great-grandfather would have been happy to have paid a little bit more for water along the way if they had known that our water bill was going to increase, probably 25% in 4 or 5 years.
Ugie explained that when he bought his business in 1998, his water bill was about $1,600. Before the pandemic, Ugie said his water bill was around $5,000 every 2 months.
I have gotten to the point that it is what it is, and you just got to kind of deal with it.
Increased water rates in Lexington are far from over. Just this past Monday, pipes burst here on Jefferson Street. And while there is money in the budget to cover some of these costs, Jeff Martone says that there's only so much in the budget. I'm Mary Alice Russell with the Rockbridge Report.
Virginians will vote on 2 constitutional amendments this election day. The first would set up a commission of legislators and citizens to draw political maps following the 2020 census. It's the latest round in a redistricting battle between Republicans and Democrats for control of determining voting districts. The second amendment would give a small tax break to veterans. An NBA legend is trying out a new sport. Later in the newscast, see what the original number 23 is up to. Our weather expert Shauna Muckle will give you the forecast for the coming days. And later, NFL fans have seen a virtual start to the season. See how the Green Bay faithful in Wisconsin are showing their support.
Welcome back to the Rockbridge Report. I'm Shauna Muckle. A Pensacola man rode out Hurricane Sally on his sailboat. Jennifer Munoz has his story.
On the Saturday before the storm, experienced Captain Robert Faulkner and his shipmate anchored Moby, a sailboat, onto the shore of Fort McRae. The plan was to ride out the storm there, but as the hurricane shifted, they were right in the path of Sally.
Tuesday night, it was really quite, the winds were really quite strong, and at about 3:30 in the morning, the anchors let go.
Shortly after, the boat started moving. Faulkner then realized they were now in the big lagoon.
You couldn't see the front of the boat. You couldn't see the other boats in the anchorage. You couldn't see anything. The rain was horizontal.
Survival instincts kicked in.
You really aren't afraid. You just are very engaged and alive, and you fear for your life, of course.
Once in the big lagoon, Faulkner tried to steer the boat, but with the winds, he couldn't.
So at that point, I had to make the call.
This is the first thing.
We're not going to jump off the boat. We're going to have to stay on until we get ashore.
Before he knew it, they had gone over the seawall. The boat came ashore between these 2 homes off the big lagoon.
I came right up here to the back of the boat.
That's when he jumped off the boat and ran to safety.
At the time I was jumping, I really thought about it then. It was like the exclamation point at the end of that crazy experience.
Faulkner says he doesn't think he'll ever ride out a storm again.
The newscasts tell you that you need to evacuate or you need to get out of the way of a hurricane. You should, because the power is just unbelievable when you're in the middle of it. It's really something.
Here's a beautiful shot of Main Street, Lexington. Now today we have some mild muggy temperatures here in Lexington with a high of 68 and a low of 58. We have very little wind speed at 1 mile per hour, but quite a bit of humidity at 73%. We also have a 15% chance of showers for the next few hours. And as you can see, we have a chance of showers throughout the region for the next 24 hours. Now in Lexington, Buena Vista, and Stanton, we have the lows here in the region at 68 degrees. Over in Charlottesville, it's a little bit warmer at 73 degrees, but there's some clouds throughout the region. And in the west, we also have some similar temperatures with 69 degrees in Covington and cloudy, and in Roanoke, it's also cloudy with a high of 70 degrees. For the next 5 days in Lexington, we're going to see some warm temperatures this weekend, potentially the last of the season. On Friday, we again see some rain with a high of 64 degrees and a low of 62. On Saturday, though, we have a high of 78 and a low of 63. On Sunday, we have a high of 80 and a low of 63. We're again back to the rain on Tuesday, but we have a high of 69, so again, some of those milder, muggier temperatures. That's all I have for this week's weather. 3 NFL coaches have been fined for not wearing face masks during their respective games. We'll have their reaction. An unexpected visitor showed her support for Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. See the adorable future justice in action.
Let's talk sports. I'm Brennan Black. NBA legend Michael Jordan announced on Monday that he's starting his own NASCAR racing team in 2021. His golf buddy and 3-time Daytona 500 winner Denny Hamlin will join him as a minority partner in the new NASCAR Cup Series race team venture. Bubba Wallace, NASCAR's lone African-American driver, will be the team's driver. Jordan, who grew up as a stock car racing fan in North Carolina, becomes the sport's first black majority owner since the 70s. Hamlin is still driving for Joe Gibbs' race team in the number 11 Toyota Camry. He believes this partnership will help him transition into an executive role after his racing days are over. The announcement was posted on the website of another sports team Jordan owns, the NBA's Charlotte Hornets. We had some great NFL games last weekend. The Washington football team lost to the Arizona Cardinals 15-30 as the second-year quarterback Kyler Murray continues to hit his sophomore stride. And Carolina Panthers star running backs Christian McCaffrey suffered an ankle injury during the Panthers' 17-31 loss to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens had a convincing 33-16 win against the Deshaun Watson-led Houston Texans. Tonight, the Jacksonville Jaguars will host the Miami Dolphins. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick will get another start as Fins fans continue to wait for rookie Tua Tagovailoa to start. The NBA playoffs continue to excite as the East and Western Conferences play their championship series. Last night, the Miami Heat beat the Boston Celtics, and tonight, LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers will play the Game 4 of their series against the Denver Nuggets at 9 p.m. The Lakers will be looking for revenge after their Game 3 loss. The NFL is leveling more than $1 million in fines against teams whose coaches didn't wear face masks during games. The league says the Seattle Seahawks' Pete Carroll, Denver Broncos' Vic Fangio, and San Francisco 49ers' Kyle Shanahan were each fined $100,000 for not wearing masks on Sunday. On top of that, all 3 teams were fined $250,000 each for mask violations. The NFL's Executive Vice President of Football Operations sent a memo to the clubs last week cautioning coaching personnel to wear their masks at all times. But during Monday night's game between the Los Angeles Lakers and Las Vegas Raiders and the New Orleans Saints, both head coaches were seen not wearing their masks. And I leave you this evening with a cheesy little nugget from Wisconsin. Like many venues, Packers fans aren't allowed in the stadium for game day, but that won't stop those loyal to the green and gold from having a good time. Charles Zerbeski reports from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
A game day unlike the others.
It's weird. It's real weird. I mean, sit out here, hear the fireworks going off in the stadium, and look around, and there's nobody in the parking lots, there's nobody tailgating anywhere.
With Lambeau Field's parking lots empty and no fans in the stands, people say game day in Green Bay feels a little bit different.
Not the norm. Normally this parking lot would have been packed by now.
Lori Hill has been selling Packer apparel on game days for 20 years.
This is definitely not normal for us. We usually have people lined up all around the table.
While streets may have been emptier than usual, nearby Packer bars were not.
It still feels great to be surrounded by all the Packer fans here. There's nothing like being with Packer fans here in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Packer houses still found ways to celebrate.
We have one of the greatest views in America sitting across the street from Lambeau Field, so might as well take advantage of it.
People say they're hoping to find normalcy in a day like today.
Be safe about it and just get out and have a good time with family and friends. That's what it's about. That's what it brings together. It brings together people. And that's what we're looking to see, is just that positive thing that comes from the sporting events.
To pay their respects to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, included a 6-year-old who hopes to follow in the late justice's footsteps. Victoria Sanchez reports.
The lines looped around barricades in the shadow of the nation's capital, and thousands made their way to the Supreme Court steps. 6-year-old Olivia Laws knows this is an important day.
Because, so many people are here.
And even wore her own dazzling neckwear, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Parents George and Cami Laws brought Olivia and 3-year-old brother Henry to witness history.
For us, it's really important. We try to stay conscious of everything that's happening in our country today, and with all the changes that are taking place, we think it's important to bring them to take part in these momentous occasions, and then hopefully when they're older they can remember these moments and then make better choices for themselves later on.
The line winded in and out of the shade. Little Olivia wasn't bothered by the heat at all. She was on a mission.
We're here to bring this sign.
Show her what women can do, and that's a role model to follow.
Ollie, look over here. I want to work in the Supreme Court.
Do you really?
Yes.
In a few years, are we going to have a justice, Olivia?
Maybe.
I think you're well on your way, Olivia.
Equal justice under law.
Ginsburg also lay in repose at the Supreme Court today. A private interment service will be held next week at Arlington National Cemetery, where she will be buried alongside her husband. For Brennan Black, Shauna Muckle, Lily Mott, and the rest of the Rockbridge Report team, I'm Donald LeCompte. Have a great night.